In the eerie hush of the 1879 New Mexico Badlands, a rancher rescued two frightened Navajo sisters from a midnight of dread, but he never imagined their 28-year-old sibling would emerge, bold, courageous, and stunningly striking. The instant their gazes locked, his destiny shifted for good. For more heartfelt frontier tales, remember to like and subscribe. All right, let's dive in. The Badlands evening in New Mexico, 1879, seemed chillier than normal as Jack Harlan steered his steed through a tight ravine. The breeze brought an odd blend of quiet and tension, prompting Jack to rest one palm close to his sidearm just in case. He'd roamed these paths for seasons, and little caught him off guard these days, or so he believed. When he glimpsed two small figures huddled under a toppled juniper bush, he halted. Kids didn't roam the wilderness after dark. Trouble was afoot. He squinted, allowing the pale glow to uncover the reality concealed in the quivering outlines. At first, Jack pondered if the forms were critters, or maybe tricks born from weariness. But then a faint, fractured whimper floated his way, the clear wail of a scared youngster. His heart clenched. He eased down from his mount, boots whispering on the grit, and drew near cautiously so not to startle them more. As he neared, the figures sharpened into focus. Two young Navajo girls, their slight frames shivering from chill and panic. They couldn't have passed 6 or 7, perhaps even less. They glanced up at him with huge, watery stares. Jack dropped to one knee a short distance off, palms in plain sight to prove he posed no threat. His tone gentled, firmer than the flutter inside him. He assured them he wasn't there to harm, that he just aimed to aid. The girls stayed mute. They only gripped each other harder, their slender backs quaking without cease. Their garments were ripped and grimy, and their little souls were raw from rashing shoeless over jagged stones. Jack knew they'd journeyed long, too long for young ones this tender to endure solo. He edged forward mindfully, dipping into his pack for an extra cover. He laid it softly across their forms, noting how they jerked at first before easing into its coziness. One buried her face, while the other fixed on Jack with a swirl of dread and longing. He sensed the burden of their quiet, the wordless horror they bore. Something awful had struck, something that hurled them into the wild night unaccompanied. Jack knew time was short. After a beat, he shrugged off his jacket and bundled it around both girls for extra warmth. He hoisted them up one by one, feeling their feather-light weight as though nights of fright and flight had sapped every bit of vigor from their wee frames. Jack positioned them on top of his horse, tucking the cover firm so they wouldn't tumble. He murmured comforts, even unsure if his language reached them, but he trusted they'd catch the kindness in his deeds. Once he climbed up behind, Jack clucked softly and nudged the horse toward firmer ground. He kept peeking back at the girls, monitoring their breaths, ensuring the frost wasn't claiming them. The moon painted silvery ghosts along the ravine sides, creating forms that seemed like specters trailing their path. Jack's thoughts swirled with wonders. Where'd they hail from? What had pursued them? Why solo? And the question that gnawed deepest, how many others lingered out there, at risk? When they hit a modest glade, buffered by sheer boulders, Jack swiftly kindled a fire to thaw them. The sparks danced, reflecting in the girls' eyes. They huddled near, still too spooked to utter a word. Jack proffered water from a battered mug, and after a pause of doubt, they sipped. I saw weariness dragging at them, lids drooping, yet their limbs too stiff for sleep. Jack didn't prod for chatter. He knew wounds sealed kids in hush. He just lingered close, signaling they weren't isolated now. The darkness thickened, ushering icier gusts and fiercer wowls. Jack watched the girls slip in and out of fitful dozes, their petite shapes nestled like a pair of timid fledglings. He remained vigilant, shielding them from each rustle and shade. Jackrabbits yipped afar, and Jack gripped his carbine tight, ready for whatever. He couldn't say why this fierce drive to protect them gripped them, fiercer than in ages. Maybe their vulnerability. Maybe they echoed how the wilds could turn savage, and sometimes folks only had one another. As the embers popped gently, Jack examined the young ones' faces, spotting welts and gashes that whispered a tale of despair. Whatever they'd fled from had shown no pity, and though he didn't know their kin, duty weighed like lead on his frame. Abandoning them never crossed his mind. Race, clan, feuds, none mattered. These were young souls, and young souls merited refuge regardless of their roots. Jack knew aiding them could stir strife, but letting the wild swallow them? Unthinkable. What Jack couldn't foresee was that leagues off, another soul was hunting them already. A woman who'd forded streams and craggy tracks, pulse thundering with dread for her vanished kin. A woman with blaze in her soul and grit in her frame. She'd sworn she'd track them by dawn or die in the attempt. And unbeknownst to Jack Harland, was on the cusp of meeting her. An encounter fated to upend his world and recast all four of theirs for always. The dawn's gentle glow eased the harsh terrain as Jack Harland led his horse to a weathered, forsaken outpost he'd sheltered in countless times. The two young girls held to him, drained, but not shuddering as fiercely as the eve prior. Jack aided them down from the seat and bore them within, clear of the parched gale. He spotted a splintered stool, brushed it clean, and eased them onto it. Their delicate cheeks were ashen from toil, but they'd warmed to him enough to nestle near rather than bolt. Jack carried that faith like a stone in his ribs. He pulled forth the remnant cornbread from his kit, moistened it with a splash, and handed bits their way. At the outset, the girls wavered as if the morsels might vanish. When they yielded, they nibbled deliberate, measured, like young ones schooled in endurance over ease. Jack held back the queries. He let the stillness root, aware scars bared only when a spirit deemed it secure to voice. He hovered patient, eyeing their stares spark with faint gleam. When the elder at last murmured, her timbre quavered like a reed in gust. She shared their village had been struck in night's black core. All was blaze, shrieks, chaos. Their ma had thrust them toward the brush, urging flight, vowing reunion swift, but the girls had dashed till legs gave out, hounded by phantom more than peril. Jack heard in quiet, knuckles whitening. He'd witnessed strikes afore. He grasped the savagery in men's veins, and now it clicked why the girls quaked at his find. Jack laid a palm on the girl's arm and vowed he'd guard them till their folk surfaced. No idle oath, one etched in his marrow. The wee pair melted against him, sipping solace from a bulwark twixt them and the void. As they polished off the meal, Jack rose and peered through the splintered portal, plodding ahead. He had to locate their band, yet peril might lurk anigh. He must tread wary lest he steer harm right to the innocents. Just as he grasped his kit, a flicker in the beam snagged his notice. A presence outdoors. A silhouette, lanky and still, etched by the rising orb. Jack's fingers twitched toward his iron. But ere he cleared leather, the two girls drew sharp breaths, their looks flipped from alarm to something unforeseen. Relief. Jack stilled. A tone drifted from the threshold, deep and shaky with dread, resolve, and a hint of raw need. Lyra. Sani. The girls bolted. Afore Jack stirred, pattering over the planked ground. Framed in the arch was a woman like none Jack had known. Her thick plate draped her sides, swaying with her sway as she sank to haunches and enfolded her siblings. She was lithe, sturdy, untamed, yet the ease flooding her facies smoothed every keen line. The bigger wept into her bosom, while the smaller latched to her hip. Jack beheld wordless, the scene's gravity pressing. This was the haven they'd yearned for in their core all eve. Their shield, their line, their mooring. The woman clasped them fierce, murmuring in Navajo, timbre laced with fondness, ache, and thanks in a rush. Jack withdrew a step, honoring their bond, though every fiber urged him to grasp her essence. After an endless stretch, she rose, and at last faced him. Her eyes clashed his, keen, ablaze at first. Then, gradual, oh so gradual, the blaze mellowed to a kinder glow.
She noted the jacket swaddling the girls, the crumb flecks on their palms, the tender space Jack had granted. Her mien shifted once more, this time to deep thanks. She advanced, palm to breast ere voicing. "I'm Kiana," she said, tone even but laced with emotion. "They're my kin." Jack named himself soft, abruptly struck how foreign his moniker rang next to hers. Kiana dipped her chin a touch. "You preserved them," she breathed. "You preserved the rememnants of my blood." Her phrasing held firm, but Jack caught the sorrow woven under, the shatter of one who'd forfeited more than tongue could bear. Jack aimed to brush the acclaim, claiming he had merely acted as any with heart would, but Kiana shook her head. "Plenty wouldn't," she countered. Her candor struck like a lash. She drew nearer, scrutiny probing him keen, as if decoding the breed of soul who'd stake his neck for two young strangers unbound by ties. Jack couldn't tear away. Something in her, her mettle, her grief, her spark, pulled him with an unseen tide. In that still, speechless pause, something stirred deep in Jack Harland. He'd shielded the young ones from gut, from grace. But Kiana kindled a fiercer ember, one he'd thought long doused. She loomed like a sentinel forged in loss and longing, and yet regarded him with thanks so pure it pierced his core. Jack wasn't one to waver easy, but a single glimpse into her depths left him off kilter, as if the earth had tilted beneath him. Kiana extended and caressed her sibling's crown soft, then glanced back at Jack with a tenderness that struck, unbidden, unearned, and perilous. She offered thanks anew, not wary, not hedged, but with true, gut-deep warmth. And right then, Jack grasped the core. He balked at calling the girl's rescue Providence, but crossing Kiana? That was another realm. One that set his blood racing, one that hummed like the dawn of a yarn he'd never sought, but couldn't flee.